talk about José Eloy Alfaro Delgado. First, I am going to talk about his biography. José Eloy Alfaro Delgado was born in Montecristi, Maraví, on June 25, 1842. His father was Don Manuel Alfaro y González, a Spanish Republican who arrived in Ecuador as a political exile. His mother, María Natividad Delgado López. Alfaro received his primary education in his native place. After finishing, he dedicated himself to helping his father in commercial business. It was a leader of the Ecuadorian Liberal Revolution in 1895 to 1924 and President of the Republic of Ecuador in two occasions, in periods that include between 1897 to 1901 and 1906 to 1911. In non-election, it was always a means of a coup d'etat by the revolutionaries, after which a constituted assembly was called to legitimize power. For his central role in the battles of the revolution and for having fought conservatives for almost 30 years, he was known as the Viejo Luchador, in English, Old Fighter. So, in 1865, and under the inspiration of General José María Urbina, he organized his first guerrillas to fight the García Moreno government. But they was defeated and had to flee in order to save his life. So Alfaro managed to escape to Panama, where he established his residence, and in 1872 he married Ana Paredes Azomena of Panamanian nationality, and from his marriage they were born 9 children. So Bolivar, Esmeraldas, Colombia, Colón, Bolivar II, Ana María América, Olmedo, Colón Eloy, and Rafael was born out of wedlock. So during his stay in Central America, in Panama, he again dedicated himself to commercial activities, importing and promoting the toquilla strap hats made in Manaví, which, thanks to his effort, achieved international fame, although they were known as Panama hats. So, thus he was able to accumulate a great fortune that he put at the disposal of the revolutionary cause. So, then Alfaro began his fight against the Catholic conservatives in the 1960s. So the revolutionary force appointed him supreme chief of Manabí and Esmeraldas provinces. During the rebellion in February 1883, a rebellion that ended on October 11 of the same year when a provisional government that restored conservatives in power. So, on June 5, 1895, the people of Guayaquil spoke out against the interim president Vicente Lucio Salazar and named him supreme chief. So Eloy Alfaro returned to the country from exile in Panama, and the liberal revolution and a short civil war with which he conquers power. So, on January 17, 1897, he had appointed constitutional president with Manuel Benigno Cueva Betancourt in the role of a vice president until September 1st, 1901, with which among his main achievements was the separation between church and state. After his first government, he support his successor Leonidas Plaza Gutierrez. But shortly afterward, difference emerged between the two. So he opposed the government of Lizardo Garcia, and on January 1st, 1906, a few days on January 17th, he proclaimed himself supreme chief and ruled until August 12th, 1911. So, during the Alfaro government period, several changes were made, including first, the legalization of divorce, the construction of many public schools, and freedom of expression was established. Also, secularism was instituted, the right to free education and civil marriage. However, the greatest achievement is considered to have completed the construction of the Trans-Indian Railroad that linked the sites of Guayaquil and Quito. It is considered that his most important legacy was the defense of democratic values, national unity, the territorial integrity of Ecuador, secularism, the modernization of Ecuadorian society, education, transportation, and communication systems. So, also, the higher military school of the Ecuadorian Army bears his name, the flagship of the naval squad, multiple avenues, military educational institutions, as college, schools, and also academics, parks and squares throughout all Ecuador. So, Alfaro is considered in the history of Ecuador as one of the most outstanding rulers and leaders with the greatest impact on the life of Ecuador. So, now I am going to speak about the liberals and conservatives in the era of Eloy Alfaro. So, during the Republican era, Ecuador was just one of several Latin American countries torn apart by conflicts between liberals and conservatives, terms that had a differing meaning back then. So, in the Alfaro era, conservatives like Garcia Moreno favored a strong connection between church and state. So the Catholic Church was in charge of weddings, education, and other civil rights. And conservatives also favored limited rights, such as only certain people who had the right to vote. And liberals like Eloy Alfaro were just the opposite. They wanted a universal vote and a clear separation between church and state. So now I am going to talk about the administrations. So Alfaro's first government was developed in two very clearly defined stages. The first, supreme chief, from its proclamation in 1895 until the Constituent Assembly met in October 1896, and the second as a constitutional president elected by said assembly, and which lasts from January 17th, 1897 to August 31st, 1901. So, as a man, Alfaro was accessible to everyone. Anyone gained his truth, simple and attractive in character, but firm in keeping his word. He was revered and admired by all. So, in the first day of his government, he personally attended to all people who came to him, especially the poor to whom he dedicated a few hours. Men, women, the elderly, the underprivileged, Indians, the Sikhs, all asked to see him and he received all except the drinks. He hated rudeness as the worst habit. So his, friend, his friends and collaborators pointed out the waste of time that this meant, but he replied, I reach for everything. It is not a despicable occupation to teach our unhappy compatriots that we all have a, a equal rights. So perhaps the people who are not crowding to talk to me never spoke to the president, and and he gave himself and by means of abundant alms of money. So during the mandate, he was especially concerned about the political reorganization of the state. So he promoted and financed the construction of the Guayaquil-Quito Railway and issued the decrees by means of which indigenous taxation was abolished. He also decreed freedom of worship, freedom of the press, and brotherhood of all Ecuadorians. So he also developed an intensive activity aimed at improving education, for which he created in Quito the Mejia School, the Manuela Cañizares School Special for Women, and the School of Juan Montalvo Special for Men. Also, the National Conservatory of Music, the School of Fine Arts, and by a decree of December 11, 1899, the military college that today bears his name. So, before the end of his term, he called for a new election, but based on the philosophy that we cannot not lose with little pieces of paper what we have gained with rifles. So he supported the candidates of General Leonidas Plaza Gutierrez for him to rise to power. So finally, and despite the military, political, religious, and social problems that he has to face, his government ended in accordance with the Constitution on August 31st, 1901. So, then a short time later, the distancing before Alfaro and Plaza arose due to various ideological and political circumstances, and above all because a certain relationship had been discovered that compromised Plaza with the conservatives. For this reason, Alfaro preferred to step away from all political activity. So when he learned that Plaza uh, had ordered to keep him strictly guarded, at the end of his government, General Plaza called again for president election, and without considering the opinion of General Eloy Alfaro, he supported and brought Lizardo Garcia to the power, who assumed the country's first magistracy on September 1st, 1905. So, only 4 months lays the government of Garcia, because on the night of December 31st, while the advent of the New Year's was being celebrated, the president house, General Emilio Maria Terán, head of the Riobamba military garrison, sent a telegram to the president in the following terms: Sir Lizardo Garcia, I greet you and wish you a happy new year. alarming you at the same time that the Riobamba garrison is at main command because Mr. Eloy Alfaro was just being proclaimed supreme chief of the nation. So, allowing this surveillance of the Guayaquil police, he marched to Riobamba, where on January 1st, in 1906, he had been proclaimed Supreme Chief of the Republic. So, um, um, the forces loyal to government tried to suppress the Alfarista movement, but a few military actions weighed the general, especially in the Chasquis field, put an end to the government resistance and allowed him on January 17, 1906 to enter once more acclaimed triumphant in the city of Guayaquil. So, a few months later, he called a new constituent assembly that was installed in Quito on October 10th of that year. So, this assembly issued on December 23 Constitution number 12 on the Republic and elect him that same day constitutional president of a second term. So, in 1909, international pressure and friction began to grow related to the border problem that Ecuador was maintained since the first year of its republican life, with a neighboring country to the south, Peru. The same problem that was at the beginning of 1910 took alarming proportions. So, in the presence of Peruvian troops threatening to diminish the national territory, Alfaro personally assumed command of the army and marched toward the southern border. Only the imposing president of the loyal Alfaro and the courage of determination of all the Ecuadorians could stop the expansion's aspirations of the Peruvians, because at that time the only superiority that the army had was only numerical, and that was not enough to stop the courage and bravery of the Ecuadorian soldiers. So to finish, I am going to talk about the January 28, 1912 assassination of Eloy Alfaro. So, General Eloy Alfaro, leader of the Liberal Revolution, ruled for 2 periods. After his second legislature, which ended on August 12, 1911, after his resignation, he nominated Emilio Estrada for the presidential elections. So, Alfaro tried to force Estrada to resign before he assumed power, to which he refused with the support of the liberal opposition and the military, who in the face of rumors of a coup rose up. So, after these events, Alfaro traveled to Panama. So, in Ecuador, there were tense moments and armed uprising, so Pedro Montero contacted Eloy Alfaro to act as a mediator, which was not accepted by the government of Carlos Freire Saldumide, so who was entrusted to power after the death of Estrada. So the liberal forces were defined in successive battles in Huigra, Naranjillo, and Yaguachi. So once in Guayaquil, Alfaro was arrested along with other leaders and then sent by train to Quito. He traveled to his destiny in his emblematic work, the railroad. So finally, in Quito on January 28, 1912, a crew stormed the jail where Eloy Alfaro, Flavio, and Dardo Alfaro, Ulparino Páez, Luciano Corral, and Manuel Serrano were being held, who were killed and dragged through the streets to El Elegido, where they were cremated. So that was everything. Thank you for your